Texas Math Mundo audience, we're in store for a real treat today. We have Miss Kayla Manning, the Texas UIL State Mathematics Champion from 2018 from Salado High School, a proud Salado High School Eagle. Miss Kayla Manning, right ahead. Let me take a moment and ask that if you enjoy this sort of content, that you please hit the subscription button. It really helps out my channel, and also hit the notification bell. Also, smash that like button and make a comment below. Right up, Miss Kayla Manning, 2018 State Champion Mathematics Class 4A from Salado High School. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Texas Math Mundo audience, we're in store for a fabulous treat today. We have Kayla Manning, the 2018 Texas UIL State Mathematics Champion Class 4A from Salado High School, a proud Eagle. Miss Kayla Manning, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. Let's start off by asking about the present. How are you doing? How have you been dealing with the pandemic?
I am doing all right. Right now I'm in a state of transition. I was living in New York for the summer working. I'm at home in Salado for a week, and then I'm moving out to Boston for school again.
Oh, wow. We're going to get to school. Where is school?
It's in Cambridge, just outside of Boston. I go to Harvard.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I think a lot of people recognize that name. So, when you're not engaged in schoolwork and work, what are your hobbies and interests?
So lately, and just during COVID, I had a lot of spare time to kind of figure that out. I really enjoy reading, just recreationally. It's fun. I also like getting outside, go on lots of walks with my family, the dogs, play some driveway basketball, and listen to music, I guess.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a lot of fun. What do you read in particular?
So I am generally a big memoir reader. I enjoy those, but sometimes I know during finals period when I'm very focused on school and doing things academic, I just want to read some junk fiction to kind of escape. So it's a good mixture, but I'd say generally nonfiction.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, wow. Sounds like fun. Sounds interesting. So I want to ask about your past. Where are you from, born and raised, and what is your cultural heritage?
So I am from Salado, Texas, or I identify as from there. I moved here in 2006, so I was 5 years old, and I grew up in the school district from first grade until I graduated. So that's where I come home to whenever I come home from school, and my cultural heritage is just very white.
Okay. Funny. So Salado through and through, from the whole school system?
First grade to graduation.
Okay, cool.
But my sister was kindergarten through graduation. At graduation, you get a little pin, I think, if you were from kindergarten to senior year, and didn't get that one.
You missed it. You missed it by kindergarten. Yeah. Oh, my God. You think they make an exception? Oh, wow.
No. All right.
So when did you realize that you had a talent for mathematics?
That's a good question. And kind of tricky. I knew that I liked math from a very early age. Whenever I was 5 years old, my dad I grew up going to church, and they have the children's handouts where you like color pictures, and I would always pass it to my dad and have him give me math problems to like challenge me. So at first it was just not, it was like addition, but like 243 plus 100 whatever, and I had a fun time learning how to like carry. And then we graduated to subtraction, long division, etc. And then I got too old to have the children's handouts, and so I really enjoyed that. I think whenever I realized I first had a talent, I have a very clear memory of being in third grade, and our teacher was doing multiplication flashcards, and she divided our classroom up into teams. And I remember one of the kids complained like, "Oh, that's not fair. They get Kayla." It's like, oh, like people want me on their team for math. And I think that was the first time where I felt like I had some sort of talent, but I've always really enjoyed it.
Oh, wow. It looks like you really enjoyed it. It was like in a fun context when you were little, and you started developing a reputation for your mathematics. That was third grade?
That was third grade.
Wow. And so when did you enter competitive mathematics? How did that start?
So I competed in different UIL events starting in second grade. I think that's the year you start. I dabbled in math, I think around fifth grade through junior high, but I didn't do any math in high school until about halfway through my junior year is whenever I picked that up. And, high school UIL math is very different from junior high, or at least the mathematics test is. And so I guess there are multiple answers. I started whenever I was probably in fifth grade with just competitive math, but UIL started kind of late in the game.
Oh, wow. So your trajectory must have been pretty steep because you made it all the way to state champion. That's incredible.
Wow. Yeah, it prevented burnout. Like, I feel like if I had started sooner, I may not have been able to work as hard and fast as I did toward the end. And so I think it worked out rather well for me.
Okay, and I do want to ask, because I haven't had many females on this show, I want to ask you, do you think being female impacted your journey at all? Did you feel the boys were especially competitive with you? Or what do you think that might have had on your journey? What kind of impact?
So I know my mindset going into the competitions, especially like say I had my pink calculator all ready to go. I just kind of saw that as like motivation because I don't know if people really expected me to do well for more reasons than one, not just because I'm a girl, but because I was like an unknown name, because a lot of the other people who were competing at that high level had either previously won or previously placed, and they were all familiar with each other. Whereas I was just kind of the dark horse who scored really well at like district and regionals. And so I think it always motivated me personally. And I never really felt like I should shy away because I'm a female. My mom is an engineer. And so I didn't even realize growing up that, women in STEM, there was that disparity that existed. So I think it's always been a positive factor for me personally. But I also feel that it's very important to have representation in this field. So I'm glad that you had me on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so happy you're here. A pink calculator, really?
Yes, the TI-84, they have the hot pink ones.
Yes,
I still have it for school.
Really? That's interesting. Well, it's a nice little flash of style, I guess. A pink cat, that's funny. So I wanted to ask, so you had a mother who's an engineer. That must have been a powerful role model. And I was going to ask, so who inspired you? I'm sure she did plenty, but who inspired you and shaped your value system?
Shaped my value system? Probably largely my parents, just because I, grew up with them. As I mentioned, my mom's an engineer, so I always grew up having, a working mother in STEM, especially. My grandmother on my dad's side, she has a master's degree, I believe, which I didn't realize whenever I was younger was super unusual for her time as well. And so I think I've always had some strong women in my family that I appreciate, as well as someone who really just encouraged my work ethic, which is something that I kind of consider central to my values today, would probably be Mr. Cabness, my math coach, because he may have been surprised by how intense I was whenever I joined math, especially towards the end of senior year, but he really encouraged that and he saw the potential.
What was his name again?
Dennis Cabness.
Oh yes, yes. He's a. I've seen him many times at the state tournament. He's a mainstay there. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. So he was very inspirational and very much helped you on your journey.
Yeah, I don't even know if he knows this, so if he sees this interview, but he's read the version of this paper. But I actually wrote my Harvard application essay about like his influence on my education. So.
Oh, I really hope this interview reaches his ears. That's such a wonderful shout out that you made to Mr. Dennis Cabanas. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I do want to talk about UIL, the 2018 season, and Salado High School. So what is Salado High School like? What's that community like? And what do you remember about that year?
So Salado and Salado High School. So we are class 4A, but whenever I was there, we were probably one of the smallest, if not the smallest school in 4A. My graduating class had about 113 students in it,
small.
I believe. And so it's quite tiny relative to some of the other schools in the classification. But with that came a really strong community that I appreciate just growing up. You know, you walk around, everyone knows everybody. Whenever I moved to Salado in first grade, there were about 80 people in that grade, and a lot of them just stayed through graduation. And so it's been really great having that central group of people traveling through the years with me. What I remember about that year in particular, lots of just, I played basketball, so I really enjoyed basketball. Lots of college application stress because I had applied to a lot of different places, and people from Salado generally just go to the state schools if they go to college, which there's like nothing wrong with that. And I would have ended up there if I didn't luck out in college admissions lottery sort of situation. But I was really wanting to go somewhere else out of state. And so I was kind of anxiously awaiting application results from there. But yeah, it was largely just sports and academics for me. That year.
Okay, wow. Okay, so you mentioned your coach, Dennis? How do you pronounce his name again?
Cabanas.
Dennis Cabanas. Yeah. Yes, and very inspirational. Did you have any other coaches, or do you remember your teammates? Would you do a shout out for your teammates?
Yes. So Mr. Cabanas was the main coach and the person I spent most of my time with, but Brian Osborne also helps him out a lot with UIL. And I just wasn't able to attend the practice period where Mr. Osborne was there. But he's definitely a big helper just for Salado's UIL program as a whole. And then my teammates, we have Ben Sunshine, who ended up winning the state championship the year after I did. I had graduated and he was a senior that year. And then Elizabeth Wan and Trey Shepard. So,
okay, and were you all a very cohesive group, a tight team, or were you working mostly solo?
I spent a lot of time practicing with Ben and Elizabeth, and they both competed exclusively in mathematics out of the other, UIL math events, because there's number sense and calculator as well. Trey was a really big number sense guy, and I think that was his main event, but he was still in our top 3, I believe. And he just didn't spend as much time focusing on the math with us because he was splitting his time with Mr. Cabanas between math and number sense.
Yeah. And did y'all go to many tournaments?
I believe so. It's really hard to think back to that time, which I mean, it was only 3 or 4 years ago for me. But I also competed in spelling, so I didn't compete in math in every tournament I went to. Okay. But we went to our fair share of invitational meets. We went to Timska State as well as district regionals and state together.
And what was your practice regimen as a team and you personally? What were your study habits?
This is interesting, actually, because I watched Larry White's interview that you did with him, and he talked about how everyone takes timed tests, and that's not what you should do. And I actually swore by taking timed tests to prepare. In the weeks leading up to state, or really like the 2 weeks leading up to it, I was probably taking like 5 a day.
Oh, really?
But I think the key is, so I took a lot of practice test times. So I got used to thinking on my feet, thinking quickly, and I knew the pace in which I needed to move through the test. So if I was breaking that pace, I should just skip a question. But after you finish taking a time test, it's really important to go back through, look at what you missed, what you didn't answer. And so I would make sure I had worked every single problem on that test before I moved on to the next one. And you get to a point also when you're taking so many time tests that you can just look at a problem and know what the answer is, not because you're like solving it in your head, but you just have it memorized, you know? Yeah. Like, you know, problem 10 on invitation A is C, 500, but you still have to like work through every step. So you have to make yourself think along the way, and you have to do the time tests with tact, like after the fact as well, whenever you're out of time. But that is what I did to practice.
And it paid off. State champion. State champion. You can't beat that. That's pretty good. That's really impressive. Really impressive. Which calculator did you use? Is that pink TI-84?
Mostly, yes. And then I also had a TI-89 that I would use on a few problems. I think mainly calculus ones. My high school didn't have calculus BC. And so I would use that to kind of speed things along whenever I was getting kind of clumsy with my calculus by hand.
Oh, wow. Okay. What is your most memorable moment or moments of those years?
That's tricky. So the weeks kind of leading up to state are really just a blur because I missed almost a full week of school between regionals and state because I was doing college visits trying to figure out where I was going to go to school after I graduated. And so during the time I wasn't traveling, I was practicing very, very hard because I didn't do anything while I was gone from school for that week. And so I was taking lots of practice tests. I remember that distinctly. I was also doing lots of spelling practice because I competed in spelling as well. I think my most clear memories, I would always do, so senior year, I did push-ups before all of my math tests to kind of get like jitters out because you can't be jittery because you are on a time test and you need the adrenaline, and it got the blood flowing as well. I actually started doing that because a kid at regionals did push-ups my junior year right after I started math. I didn't advance past regionals, but this kid ended up getting first place and beating me. So it's like, oh, I have to do push-ups now, like just to get that habit. And so it paid off, I guess. I also have a clear memory of just walking up to the stage. I'm pretty sure Larry White called Mr. Cadness up with me because I have a picture of me, Mr. Cadness beside me, and Larry White putting the medal on me, which is a super cool picture. I'm glad I have that. And then another memory is, this is actually a tradition that's been carried on by our math program after I graduated, but at Timska State in San Antonio my senior year, we went to Walmart the night before the competition just to pick up like food for people to have in their hotel rooms. I'm not sure, but a group of guys in the math program, I'm not sure what group they are in, they found a Walmart safety vest. It was lying in the parking lot. I don't know if this is theft. I didn't take it, but they took it with them, and that became the good luck vest. And so, because someone wore it at regionals and performed well, so then it was worn at regionals, and then at state, Ben wore the good luck vest. And so in our team pictures after awards, Ben is wearing his vest. And apparently the vest is still in Salado High School, and kids are wearing it in their math competitions.
That's funny. That's a funny story. The Walmart vest.
I gave you many memories, but those are some of the most distinct.
That is funny. The Walmart vest is very hilarious. But you heard it here. Push-ups before the tournament. Push-ups before the tournament.
Yes. I do it before some of my college exams still.
Wow. So, you've been to the state meets. You know how electric it is. You know how special that environment is. But, how does it feel to be number one? How does it feel to be a state champion?
It's very weird to wrap your mind around. I would say for math particularly, it felt very different. I had performed well in spelling prior to joining math. And so it got to a point to where that was just kind of like, expected, and so it lost its like shine whenever I did perform well. But math was something that no one expected, not really including myself, just because I joined so late in the game and most people knew me for doing spelling. And so it really meant a lot to me because it was something I started doing just because I enjoyed it. I wanted to have fun. And so the fact that I was able to put in that amount of work in a relatively short period of time, it was incredibly rewarding, and it just made me so happy. I would have been happy if I hadn't won state, just because I enjoyed the tests that much, and I enjoyed the process of just like seeing that rapid improvement so quickly. But having won that medal in the end, it just really put the cherry on top of the experience for me. But I still would have enjoyed it had I not.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, you know, the medal is great and I'm glad you won it and it's so fantastic, but the journey really means something, you know, and you learned all this beautiful mathematics and you learned a lot about yourself, you know, in that journey. That's wonderful. But you did win that medal. So awesome. So awesome. Where do you keep that gold medal?
Probably somewhere in this closet that I have right next to me. We used to have shadow boxes where I kept my medals. Starting like freshman year, my mom started putting them together whenever I was doing spelling. But they soon got kind of like overwhelmed and the medals would start falling. And so I think they are somewhere in a box or a container in a closet in my home.
That state one is special. One day you need to find it and display it prominently. That's bragging rights. That's bragging rights for the rest of your life. You know, and an interesting conversation piece.
Yeah,
you know,
I suppose.
So, you mentioned you go to Harvard. What are you studying there?
So I'm doing a double major. We call it a joint concentration in statistics and government. So I have a nice mix of quantitative and qualitative.
Sounds fascinating. Wow, sounds interesting. And you're there with the greatest minds, and you are one of the greatest minds. But it must be one great environment there. It just must be fantastic to be there.
I really love it.
Do you think your UIL experience helped you on this journey to get there and as you proceed through your education?
Absolutely, to get there. I think having grown up doing spelling in particular, there's a lot of like memorization in it, to be frank, but also recognizing patterns and being able to take tests well, because I don't know how familiar you are with the spelling UIL test, but there's an editing section, there's a vocabulary section, and there's a spelling section where they say the words and you write it. And as you get to district, regionals, and state, they throw in outside words that aren't on the list. And so you really are working through a variety of different types of problems, and it engages different parts of your brain. And so that allowed me to really hone in my test taking skills. So in terms of like standardized tests, I think spelling just made me the right type of thinker, because so much of it is just knowing how to take a test. So it definitely helps me get to college, and just having some like awards on my resume when I was applying. In terms of actually being in college, I think spelling and math were definitely immensely helpful. I know in your high school curriculum, there's eventually like a ceiling to how much you can like challenge yourself or achieve, especially if like the grading at your school is relatively easy, because then it's like, okay, why push even harder if I have a 100 in this class, because it's not going to get any higher. Whereas the ceiling is so much higher for UIL.
Yes.
In terms of achievement. Like it takes a lot to get a 360 on a math test, especially at the state level. I don't know if that's happened before or not. And so I think it really created room for me to challenge myself. And so whenever I was in the college classroom, I was still caught off guard because I was used to being one of the smarter people, and I definitely was not when I went to college, but I wasn't as caught off guard whenever I was given problems that I didn't know how to do, and when I was challenged, because I had started math maybe scoring like in the double digits, and then I eventually worked my way to state champion. So I knew I was capable of kind of training myself to do well in these situations.
Awesome. So having traveled that journey, it gave you more confidence that you could go ahead and conquer this mountain as well. Wow, wow.
Yes.
So, have you ever set foot back in Salado High School? Visit Mr. Cabanas, or do you envision yourself ever returning to Salado, or as a mentor possibly? I know there's a lot of uncertainty, unpredictability at this stage of your life, but what are your thoughts?
So I have set foot back in Salado High School. My sister actually graduated high school this past year, class of 2021. And so I went to all of her graduation events, got to see plenty of my former teachers, including Mr. Cabness. I had gone back and visited him a few times since I had graduated and when I was home from school just to like catch up because we still keep tabs on each other. But whenever I was in town this spring for my sister's graduation, the last week of school, I went into the school one day into UIL practice session as well as the statistics class and just like talked to the kids and Mr. Cabness about what I was doing. My goal is to try to get other people from Salado to try to go to Harvard or other places. Just send in applications because it gets to a point to where you could be the most qualified person ever and still not get in just because so many people apply and they have so few spots for everyone. But I just want kids to feel like they should put their name in the hat and they can put their name in the hat. So I was kind of going there on my mini like recruiting trip, but not really, just to try to get kids to feel comfortable putting themselves out there for different schools.
Well, that's a wonderful goal, and you're such a wonderful role model. You know what I'm saying? So just having you come from those same hallways that they walk now, having you come and visit them and show them what's possible, I think that's so incredibly powerful. So powerful. Absolutely. So, what do you value the most about your UIL journey?
I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, it would be the confidence that it instilled in me and that I could do well not only in the classroom, but also just like on a grander scale. Because again, like you can be a top student in a school, but it's different to be a top student in a state. And even then, it's not so much about being the top, but just among the top. Because on any given day, there are probably 10 or so kids who could win the state championship reasonably. And it just comes down to how they perform on that test. But I knew going into this state meet, like, hey, this may not be my test. This may not be my day, but I've still worked very hard to get myself in a place to where I am among the top. And so whatever the outcome, it's still impressive. And I was confident in my abilities to just be able to do math, which is, always a useful thing to be able to do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like how you put it, you can be a big fish in a small pond, but in UIL is a bigger pond. And so you get a broader perspective of mathematical excellence. Awesome. Awesome. So this next question I consider very important. What advice do you have for any young students that may come across this interview, maybe a younger version of yourself, that comes across and is listening to, state champion Kayla Manning? What do you have to say to them?
That's tricky. And I'm going to have a hard time articulating this concisely. But I think if you have an academic interest that you think you might like, but you fear it may hold you back in some other pursuit that you've been historically successful in, just try it. Anyway, I know for me, one thing that prevented me from joining math at the outset is because I knew I was good at spelling and I could do well in spelling, and I didn't want math to distract from that. And so I did spelling and I did it well in my first few years of high school, but I started to kind of feel burnt out. And Mr. Cabness had heard of me before. Salado is a very small town, so he'd been trying all throughout high school to get me to just, try out math. And so finally, whenever I had him in the classroom junior year, I was like, hey, can I have some practice tests and see what this is about? And I did it. And yes, it took away practice time from spelling, but I enjoyed it so much. And it really, trying that something new that I wanted to do, but was kind of scared, it made me perform better in spelling too, or it made me feel less burnt out because I had this other thing that I was looking forward to. And so I think even if you feel like you won't be good at something or it'll hurt other components of your quote unquote success, just pursue your interests, particularly if it's academic, because there's little harm in, liking math, to be quite frank.
Great. That's interesting perspective. That's great, Kayla. Great. What does the future hold for you, Miss Kayla Manning?
That is a great question, and I wish I knew the answer to it. But because I don't, I think that makes it all the more exciting. I mean, I have several things I'm interested in school, and so I'm excited to see where that takes me. In the near future, I'm moving back to Cambridge in a few days, and I'm very excited for that. We're having an in-person semester for the first time in almost 2 years.
Yeah.
That'll be great. But yeah, near future, I don't really know, but I'm excited to find out.
Well, yeah, you're at that stage of life where there's a lot of uncertainties. But it's still very exciting time of your life. Very exciting. Do you have any parting words or final thoughts as we conclude this interview?
If there are kids out there watching this who want to do well, win state, succeed, I really hope you do too, because I would have been watching these videos when I was in high school, and I'm very grateful that you are creating these videos, because I think it's a great resource for people to not only just hear about different strategies people had from that perspective, but also just hear about where people went after UIL, because that it may feel like the world if you're super into it, but the world moves on beyond that. So I think what you're doing is very great.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. It's Kayla Manning, Texas UIL state champion 2018 in mathematics from Salado High School. I can't begin to tell you how appreciative I am of you coming on this channel and sharing your perspective and sharing your story. I think it's very inspiring. You're a great conversationalist, and I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well.
I want to wish you the best of luck. I wish you the very best, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Farewell. Wow, what a wonderful young lady. Miss Kayla Manning, the Texas UIL state champion in mathematics from 2018 from Salado High School, a proud Eagle. That was such an enjoyable conversation. She had such a wonderful perspective. I wish her all the best at Harvard. And if you enjoy this sort of content, let me ask you to go ahead and hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell. It really helps the channel out. Also, smash that like button and leave a comment below. I really appreciate your help. I have plenty of great things in store for this channel. Thank you very much. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Farewell.